The safe house was supposed to be secure, the extraction point supposed to be clear, and the 6-person Navy SEAL team supposed to have 48 hours before enemy forces could find them in the remote mountain valley. Instead, they had 60 armed militants converging on their position from 3 directions with less than 20 minutes warning. The odds were 10-1 against them. The situation was collapsing by the second, and the team's only sniper, Tessa Rivera, had exactly one choice: start eliminating targets faster than they could organize an assault, or watch her teammates be cut down in the next 30 minutes. Some snipers count their shots, others count their saves. This is the story of one woman, one rifle, and the 47 enemy combatants who learned that numbers don't matter when you're facing someone who never misses. Tessa Rivera was 29 and had been a Navy SEAL sniper for 6 years when everything went wrong in the Panjshir Valley region of Afghanistan, a place of brutal beauty where Ahmad Shah Massoud once held off Soviet forces, where mountains rose like walls and every village could be a fortress. The mission had seemed straightforward when they briefed it 72 hours earlier at Bagram Airfield. Infiltrate a remote valley near the Pakistan border, gather intelligence on a suspected terrorist training facility, and extract before enemy forces could respond. 6 operators, 3 days in and out, with nobody the wiser. The team was small but lethal. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb led the element. 10 years of SEAL experience, 2 deployments with DevGru, the kind of operator who'd seen everything and survived. Chief Petty Officer James Torres handled breaching and close-quarters combat. Petty Officer First Class David Chun was their comms specialist. Petty Officer Second Class Miguel Santos ran point and navigated the treacherous terrain. Petty Officer Second Class Sarah Mitchell was their medic and secondary assault operator. And Tessa was their overwatch, the one who saw threats before they became problems, who eliminated targets at distances the others couldn't, who kept the team alive when everything else went to hell. Which was exactly what had happened. They'd inserted by helicopter 3 nights earlier, landing 15 kilometers from their target. The infiltration had gone perfectly. No contact, no compromise, moving through terrain so rugged most enemy units avoided it entirely. They established a hide site in an abandoned shepherd's compound built into the mountainside, a structure that gave them clear sight lines while remaining concealed from casual observation. The intelligence gathering went well. They identified the training facility, documented personnel and communications, and gathered enough evidence to justify a larger operation. Mission success with 48 hours left before extraction. Then Shin intercepted enemy radio traffic that made everyone's blood run cold. "They know we're here," he said, voice tight over the encrypted receiver. "I'm picking up multiple units being diverted to this valley. They're organizing a search. Someone compromised our position." Webb ordered a bug out toward the backup extraction point 8 kilometers northeast, but before they could pack, Torres, on watch at the compound's elevated position, made the radio call that confirmed their worst fear. Contact, multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Estimate 20-plus military-age males armed with AKs and PKMs, heading straight for our position. The team moved to defensive positions immediately, but the situation deteriorated with terrifying speed. More enemy forces appeared from the west, then the north. Within 10 minutes, they were looking at an estimated 60 hostile combatants closing to surround them from 3 sides, with more likely coming from the 4th direction, the east, where the terrain was hardest, but also where their only real escape route lay. Webb made the hard tactical call fast. "We can't outrun them carrying all our gear. We make a stand here, hold them off long enough for air support to arrive. Chun, get me CAS on station ASAP." Close air support, he knew, could buy them the breathing room they needed. But Chin's reply was the last piece of bad news. "CAS 40 minutes out minimum. Closest Apaches are engaged elsewhere. We're on our own until they can disengage." 40 minutes against 60-plus hostile fighters preparing an assault on a position they somehow already knew was occupied. The abandoned compound was defensible, but far from ideal. Stone walls offered good protection from small arms fire, yet limited mobility and created fixed positions that could be flanked. The elevated watch point gave excellent observation, but exposed its occupant to fire from multiple directions. The main structure's few entry points were good for defense, but a liability if they needed to withdraw under fire. Tessa moved to the elevated position without hesitation, setting up her rifle, a 13 Malawian Quatches Mod 7 in .300 Winchester Magnum with a Schmidt and Bender optic, and sweeping fields of fire over the most likely approach routes. From her perch, she could see roughly 270 degrees of the surrounding terrain, with engagement ranges from 200 meters to more than 800 depending on the axis. The rest of the team fortified the main compound, covering gaps in her sectors and preparing to blunt any assault that made it through her line of fire. They had enough ammunition for a sustained fight, but not forever. Some fragmentation grenades, one claymore, radio contact with higher command, but no way to speed the arrival of help. What they did have was Tessa Rivera, a sniper with 120 rounds of match-grade ammunition and 6 years of experience taking shots under the worst possible conditions. Tango units organizing at the tree line, 600 meters south, she reported calmly over the team net. Estimate 25 fighters, preparing to assault by fire and maneuver. Second group of 20 at the ridge line, 400 meters west. Third group approaching from the north. Can't get a solid count yet, but estimate another 15 to 20. Copy. Webb said. You have weapons free on any hostile that presents a threat. Make your shots count. We need to break their will to assault before they commit to a full push. Tessa's elevated view made her the thin line between an organized slaughter and a fighting chance, the only thing standing between the compound and an enemy that already believed victory was inevitable. The enemy was spreading out, forming 3 groups around the compound. The southern group was the largest and most organized. They dismounted from their vehicles with precision, clearly preparing a coordinated assault, a base of fire element with a flanking maneuver. The western group was slower, struggling through rough terrain but getting closer. The northern group remained distant yet moved with steady purpose. Engaging southern group, Tessa transmitted, her tone calm, starting with what looks like leadership elements. Through her scope, the world sharpened into narrow, magnified focus. At 600 meters, the enemy fighters came into clear view. Men in a mix of military and civilian gear, AK-47 slung over their shoulders, PKM machine guns ready, some with RPGs strapped across their backs. They were organizing, leaders gesturing and shouting orders, positioning fighters for the assault. Tessa's breathing slowed. Her pulse dropped. Training took over. The world outside the scope faded to background noise. This was the zone where elite snipers lived. No panic, no rush. Just calm, deliberate execution. One man stood out, the southern group's apparent leader. He was signaling fighters to his left, orchestrating a flanking movement. Half hidden behind a tree, but part of his torso was visible. That was enough. Tessa adjusted her scope, 600 meters, light crosswind left to right, slight upward angle. The crosshairs settled over his chest. She exhaled halfway and held it steady. Pressure built smoothly on the trigger. The rifle kicked softly against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the hit. The man dropped instantly. Target down, she said evenly, already moving to the next. The fighters panicked, scanning the terrain, trying to find the invisible shooter who was 600 meters away behind a suppressed rifle. A man with a PKM was setting up behind a rock, perfect field of fire toward the compound. He never got the chance to use it. Tessa's second round struck before he could even raise the weapon. The southern group started breaking down. Confusion replaced coordination. They shouted orders, ducked for cover, and fired blindly in the wrong directions. Tessa shifted her scope toward the west. The western group was closer, about 400 meters, moving aggressively through the rough ground, believing they were safe from sniper fire. A fighter dashed between boulders, trying to close distance. She tracked him, predicted his next stop, and fired just as he dove behind cover. He didn't make it. The round caught him mid-movement, and he dropped hard. Western group is 350 and closing, she reported. Engaging. Another fighter was preparing an RPG shot, a serious threat to the compound's walls. Tessa's shot came faster this time, 2 seconds from sight to squeeze. The man crumpled before the launcher could be aimed. The Western fighters had her general location now. They opened up with bursts of AK-47 fire. Rounds cracked overhead, thudded into stone walls below, but none came close. Tessa ignored them. Fear wasted energy. Panic killed focus. She stayed in rhythm, sight, breathe, fire. Another fighter dropped. Then another. A leader waving his arms, an RPG gunner, a man laying suppressive fire, all eliminated with clean precision. Western group is breaking contact. Torres called from the main compound. They're falling back. You've got them spooked. Northern group's still coming, Webb added. 350 meters, they haven't realized we've engaged the others yet. Tessa pivoted north. The northern fighters were cautious, moving through a ravine that offered cover. Her sightlines were limited, glimpses of movement between rocks, fleeting targets. She waited patiently. A fighter darted across open ground. One shot down. Another paused behind what he thought was concealment, but from her high vantage, he was fully exposed. Another pull, another target gone. The northern group froze. Now they knew. They hunkered down roughly 250 meters from the compound, not advancing, not retreating. They'd become a static threat. Southern groups reorganizing, Chin's voice cut in. Looks like reinforcements, more fighters, maybe vehicles. Tessa swung south again. The tree line now swarmed with movement. 30, maybe 40 fighters, with pickup trucks arriving. They were learning, keeping to cover. Then she saw it. A technical truck with a mounted heavy machine gun rolling into position. A dangerous threat. If that weapon opened up, it could pin the entire compound down. She knew shooting the gunner wouldn't solve it. Someone else would replace him. The vehicle itself needed to be disabled. She adjusted aim from the gunner to the engine block. 650 meters. 3 quick shots. The last round punched through, and smoke poured from under the hood. The truck stuttered to a stop, billowing gray. The technical was out of the fight, but the battle was far from over, and the enemy was adapting. They were keeping better cover now, moving more carefully, no longer easy targets. The southern group was assembling what looked like a coordinated base of fire element to suppress the compound, while maneuver elements advanced from multiple directions. Contact west, Santos called. They're trying to flank our position. Estimate 10 fighters moving through the blind spot in your coverage. Tessa couldn't watch every angle at once. The western flanking team was moving through terrain she couldn't observe from her perch. The squad would have to confront that threat with direct fire. She heard the sharp cracks of M4s as teammates engaged the flank, the rasp of AK-47 return fire, and the metallic thunk of grenades landing. Close quarters fighting she couldn't influence from a sniper position. Western flankers repelled, Webb reported. 2 enemies down. The rest withdrew, but they'll try again. Southern group advancing. Tessa replied, eyes on the scope as roughly 25 fighters bounded forward from cover to cover, using terrain and brush to mask their movement. They were executing a competent infantry assault, machine guns suppressing while riflemen advanced in short rushes. Tessa increased her tempo. A man sprinting between boulders, she led him and fired, dropping him mid-stride. A gunner peeking from behind a tree. She waited until he exposed himself and eliminated him. A leader directing the assault presented a difficult angle, but she prioritized him and took the shot. Her cadence climbed to 1 round every 4 to 6 seconds, fast for a precision shooter, but necessary. Each shot still demanded target acquisition, range estimate, wind correction, and flawless trigger control. Each result was either a hit or a near miss that forced a fighter to seek cover. The southern assault stalled. They'd pushed maybe 50 meters before casualties forced them to the ground. Their momentum broke, but only temporarily. Tessa watched them regroup, pull in reinforcements, likely preparing to mass enough force to overpower the position. Northern group moving again, Torres warned. They're using the ravine as cover. I can barely see them. Tessa shifted north. The ravine approach was tactically sound, excellent concealment, and capable of bringing attackers within 200 meters before they'd have to expose for a final rush, but it also funneled them into a predictable exit. I've got the ravine exit covered, she transmitted. If they come out, I can engage. TS still 20 minutes out, Chin said, frustration thin in his voice. 20 more minutes against an enemy that was growing larger and more organized by the minute. So far the team had held the perimeter because of Tessa's long-range fire and the compound's direct engagement, but ammunition was finite and the enemy's reinforcements seemed endless. Fighters began spilling from the ravine in small groups of 3 and 4, trying to overwhelm her ability to engage. She worked them methodically. First fighter down, second down, third seeking cover, fourth retreating into the ravine. The next group met the same fate, Casualties, survivors scattering. They're testing us, Webb observed over the radio, probing to learn our limits and fix our positions. The real assault is coming. He was right. The enemy commander was clever, sacrificing minimal forces on probes to gather intelligence and reserving his main body for a coordinated strike once he understood their defense. South, west, north, all getting reinforced, Tessa reported, watching vehicles arrive at distant positions. Estimating 70-plus fighters now, maybe more. Ammunition was a growing concern. Tessa had started with 120 rounds. She'd fired about 35, roughly 30 confirmed hits, and 5 near misses that achieved suppression, leaving 85 rounds for whatever came next. The sun was falling, complicating her effectiveness. Her scope had low-light illumination, but identifying targets would become harder as darkness deepened. The enemy likely knew this and would wait for night to launch their main assault. Be advised, enemy commander probably waiting for dark, she transmitted. Once muzzle flash and visual ID get harder, they'll push hard. Agreed, Webb replied. We need to make the next 20 minutes count. When KS arrives, we'll need targets marked for immediate strikes. The wait felt endless. Tessa maintained overwatch as enemy positions consolidated, machine guns being readied for fire support, assault elements forming, leaders moving between nodes to coordinate. She engaged targets of opportunity. A fighter who exposed himself too long, a machine gun team setting up where she could reach them, officers who stood to observe the compound. Each shot ate into her ammo but delayed the enemy's preparations. Every casualty she inflicted was one fewer fighter available for the coming assault. Every leader she removed disrupted their coordination. 10 minutes to CAS, Chen said. Light failed rapidly as the sun slid behind the western ridgeline, long shadows stretching across the valley. Tessa switched to the scope's faint, illuminated reticle, the red crosshair a thin guide in the gathering gloom. Movement south, she reported. They're shifting positions, probably final assault prep. Movement north, Torres reported, multiple fighters exiting the ravine and forming up at the exit point. Movement west, Sandoz called in, a larger flanking group. The coordinated assault had begun, 3 directions at once, likely committing every remaining fighter to overwhelm the position before air support could arrive. All positions, weapons free. Engage at will, Webb ordered. Tessa, prioritize whatever threatens to break through. Everyone else, cover your sectors. Fight smart and make your ammo count. The southern assault hit first, roughly 25 fighters advancing with heavy fire support from machine guns hidden in the tree line. Tessa focused on those machine gun positions, suppressing them long enough for her teammates to engage the riflemen. Her fire kept the gunners' heads down, blunting their rate of fire and accuracy. M4 cracks from the compound answered as teammates cut into the advancing ranks. Grenades bloomed where the enemy closed to toss range. Defensive fire was heavy but controlled, each shooter picking targets, managing rounds, working to stop the surge. The northern wave poured out of the ravine next, 15 to 20 fighters sprinting across open ground for the final 200 meters. This was the decisive moment. If they closed, the fight would collapse into lethal close quarters where numbers mattered. Tessa shifted everything to the north, the cadence of her fire settling to a steady 3-second rhythm. Target, range, wind, fire, flawless, mechanical execution. The first fell at 180 meters, the next at 170, another at 160. Casualties mounted faster than the line could close. Survivors went to ground at 140 meters, pinned by accurate fire and unable to escape. Meanwhile, the western flanking attempt pressed the compound's weakest sector, a gap neither Tessa nor the fixed positions could fully cover. Santos and Mitchell fought there with grenades and short bursts, buying time. West sectors getting pressed hard. Santos panted over the net. Could use support. Tessa couldn't shift to that flank. She had to trust her teammates while keeping the other threats suppressed. By then, the southern assault had been halted roughly 100 meters out, survivors hunkered down and trading fire, but no longer advancing. The northern force remained pinned at 140 meters. The western push was taking losses from Santos and Mitchell's determined defense. CAS 2 minutes out, Chen reported. We need target locations for immediate strikes. Tessa assessed quickly. The greatest concentration of enemy forces, and the heavy weapons, was still along the southern tree line. That had to be struck first to prevent reinforcement or another assault. Priority: tree line, 600 meters south of compound. Estimate 25 to 30 fighters plus heavy weapons and vehicles. Secondary: ridge line, 400 meters west. Estimate 15 fighters attempting to flank. Copy. Marking targets for CAS. Chen acknowledged. The sound of jet engines grew, then sharpened into the silhouettes of F-16s cutting the darkening sky. Viper flight, this is Ground Team 1. Troops in contact, danger close. Request immediate fire mission on marked coordinates. Chen transmitted. Ground Team 1, Viper 21, copy danger close. Stand by for ordnance. The jets came in fast, releasing 500-pound GPS-guided bombs that tracked clean to target. Explosions tore the tree line apart, brilliant flashes swallowing the failing light. Secondary detonations followed as vehicles and ammo cooked off. The blast wave rolled across the clearing, debris, smoke, and a roar that could be felt from 600 meters. The southern assault position was shattered. Any survivors fled the inferno. The F-16 circled for a second pass on the western ridgeline. More precision strikes, more devastation, more enemy positions obliterated. What had been a desperate, multi-directional assault disintegrated into rout. All sectors, enemy withdrawing, Webb transmitted. Maintain observation. Conserve ammo. Tessa swept her scope. The southern tree line was a burning wreck, the western ridge cratered and smoking, the northern ravine exit empty as assault elements melted back into cover and withdrew. I'm seeing scattered individuals moving east and south, no organized groups, no offensive posture, she reported. CAS on station for 30 minutes. Available for additional strikes and overwatch during extraction, Chen added. 25 minutes later, the extraction helicopter touched down in a small clearing near the compound, rotors chopping the smoke-thick air as the team prepared to move out. Clearing 200 meters from the compound, the team moved in formation as F-16s circled overhead, their engines humming through the night sky while keeping eyes on the surrounding valley. The team broke down their defensive position, collected every piece of gear and sensitive material, and made their way to the waiting helicopter under the protective watch of the aircraft above. As the chopper lifted off, Tessa looked down at the battlefield below. The southern tree line still burned with dull, orange light. From this height, the compound where they'd made their stand looked fragile, just a scar in the earth. The valley that had nearly become their grave vanished beneath the darkness. She had fired 87 rounds. 73 confirmed eliminations or suppressions. She had stopped multiple assault waves and kept her entire team alive through the hardest 40 minutes of her career. Hell of a job up there, Rivera. Webb's voice crackled through the headset, heavy with exhaustion but layered with respect. Without your overwatch, they'd have overrun us in the first 10 minutes. You just saved 6 lives tonight. Just doing my job, sir, Tessa answered, her tone carrying the same weariness. Your job? Torres cut in, half laughing. Your job was holding off 60-plus fighters for 40 minutes while outnumbered 10 to 1. That's not a job. That's superhuman. The others murmured their agreement. They had all seen it. They knew how close it had been, how one steady sniper rifle had made the difference between survival and annihilation. The helicopter banked toward Bram, carrying 6 operators who had just survived a fight no one expected them to walk away from. Behind them, the enemy was still retreating from a valley they thought would be an easy victory, until they met a Navy SEAL sniper who didn't miss. 3 days later, Tessa sat in a cold debriefing room at Bram, answering questions from intelligence officers determined to dissect every second of the engagement. The numbers stunned even them. The enemy force had been far larger than anyone predicted, around 90 fighters. 47 confirmed kills were directly attributed to Tessa's sniper fire, with another dozen caused by her teammates' defense. Among the dead was the commander leading the southern assault, a mid-level Taliban officer. That single shot, taken through the smoke and chaos, had changed the course of the battle. The enemy believes they attacked a force of at least 20 to 30 coalition fighters, one intelligence officer said. They can't accept that one sniper caused most of their casualties. Good, Webb muttered. Let them think we're stronger than we are. It'll make them hesitate next time. When the debriefing wrapped up, Webb pulled Tessa aside. "There's talk of recommending you for the Silver Star," he said. "What you did out there was beyond expectations." "I was just doing what I was trained to do, sir," she replied quietly. He shook his head. "We're all trained, Rivera. But not everyone performs like that under fire. You held off a force 10 times our size for 40 minutes. You didn't just follow training. You rewrote what it means to stay calm under pressure." Tessa didn't know how to respond. She'd simply done what needed to be done, made the shots that mattered, kept her team alive. That's what being a SEAL was all about. 6 months later, she stood in dress uniform under a bright morning sun, receiving the Silver Star for valor in combat. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States while serving as a sniper with a Navy SEAL element engaged in combat operations." Petty Officer Rivera's exceptional marksmanship, tactical skill, and unwavering courage under intense enemy fire were directly responsible for preventing her team's position from being overrun by numerically superior hostile forces. The medal felt heavy in her hand, not for its weight, but for what it represented. Years of training, discipline, and 40 relentless minutes when every shot meant life or death. But the moment that stayed with her wasn't the ceremony or the applause. It was 3 days after the battle, when the team gathered in the mess hall. Torres raised his coffee cup and said, "To the best damn sniper in the Navy, who proved one person with a rifle can beat any odds." The others echoed the toast. And right then, Tessa understood what truly mattered. Not medals, not recognition, but the respect of those who'd been there. The people who saw her work, who trusted her aim, who lived because she didn't break. She had been outnumbered 10 to 1, facing impossible odds. 40 minutes that tested every skill she'd ever learned. She didn't panic. She performed, shot by shot, target by target. 47 enemies had learned that numbers don't decide battles. Skill does. Training does. And the refusal to surrender. Tessa Rivera, Navy SEAL sniper, had proven what few ever could. When your team's lives depend on your aim, when everything's falling apart, that's when instinct takes over. That's when skill becomes art. The enemy thought they were fighting 6 SEALs. They were wrong. They were fighting 5 SEALs and Tessa Rivera. And that made all the difference. Thanks for watching.